Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. My name's Lucas, and I've got a story that hits harder than most. It's about how people judge you in the blink of an eye, based on your jacket, your job title, or the way you walk into a room. You'd hope we'd be past that kind of snap judgment by now, but if you've ever been brushed off or underestimated before you could even speak, you know it's alive and well. At my sister's wedding, her fiancé's father treated me like I was invisible, barely worth a glance. But when he found out who I really was, he couldn't backpedal fast enough. I returned the favor in my own way, and let me tell you, it felt good. Wondering what flipped his attitude so fast? I'll get to that, but to understand the whole picture, we need to start at the beginning. My younger sister, Clara, and I were raised by our dad in a small apartment in Portland. Our mom left when we were kids, remarried, and built a new life somewhere across the country. We didn't hear from her much after that, just the occasional birthday card that felt more like an obligation than love. It was just Dad, Clara, and me, and we made it work. Dad ran a small auto repair shop, the kind of place where locals came for honest work at fair prices. Money was tight sometimes, but he always made sure we had food on the table and clothes that fit. He wasn't big on words, but his actions spoke volumes. He'd stay up late fixing a neighbor's car for free or slip Clara a few bucks for school supplies when she thought he wasn't looking. We thought that's how it would always be. Then, one gray morning, everything shattered. I was 21, a junior in college, juggling classes and a part-time job at a hardware store. Clara was 16, a sophomore in high school with a knack for art. I was in the middle of a lecture when my phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't know. It was the hospital. Dad had been in a construction accident, helping a friend on a side job. A scaffold collapsed, and he didn't make it. I don't remember leaving class or driving to the hospital. I just remember standing in a sterile hallway, the doctor's words echoing like they were coming from underwater. Clara was at school, oblivious, and I had to be the one to tell her. When I picked her up and broke the news, she collapsed against me, sobbing so hard I thought she'd break. I held her, but inside I was breaking too. The grief was brutal, but what came next was worse. Dad's shop had been struggling for years, and he'd taken out loans to keep it afloat. He never told us how bad it was, probably to shield us. After he died, the creditors came knocking. They took the shop, our car, even the apartment we called home. Within a month, Clara and I were left with a couple of duffel bags and nowhere to go. I'll never forget the night after Dad's funeral, sitting in a dingy motel room with Clara asleep on the bed next to me. The weight of it all hit me like a freight train. I was all she had left. At 21, I wasn't just her brother anymore. I was her guardian, her provider, her everything. I didn't have time to mourn the way I wanted. Clara needed stability, and I had to figure out how to give it to her. I was still in college, but graduation felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. I pushed through my classes, barely sleeping, and picked up every job I could find. Weekdays, I stocked shelves at a grocery store. Nights, I waited tables at a 24-hour diner. Weekends, I did whatever came up, landscaping, painting houses, even cleaning offices after hours. My body ached. My eyes burned, but I kept going. Every paycheck went to rent for a tiny studio apartment, groceries, and Claire's school fees. I made sure she had sketchbooks and pencils, because drawing was the one thing that still lit her up. There were nights I'd come home at 2 a.m., see her asleep with her sketch pad open, and feel a pang of guilt that I couldn't give her more. Something had to give, and it was my personal life. I've been seeing someone, Emily, for almost 2 years. She was patient at first, understanding when I canceled plans or showed up distracted. But the cracks started showing. I forget to text back, miss her calls, or fall asleep during the rare moments we had together. "Lucas, you're not here," she said one night, tears in her eyes. "I feel like I'm dating a ghost." She wasn't wrong. I was stretched so thin I barely recognized myself. I ended things, not because I stopped loving her, but because I had to prioritize. Clara needed me more than Emily did, and I couldn't fail her. I told myself there'd be time for love later, when the ground wasn't crumbling beneath us. For now, my sister was my purpose. After Dad's death, life became a marathon I couldn't stop running. I was Lucas, the 21-year-old college junior turned guardian to my 16-year-old sister, Clara, in Portland. Every day was a balancing act, classes, multiple jobs, and making sure Clara had enough to keep her going. I graduated by the skin of my teeth, my GPA a shadow of what it could have been. But the diploma wasn't the point anymore. It was the door to something steadier. I landed a job at a logistics company, nothing glamorous, just a desk job pushing paperwork and tracking shipments. The pay was enough to cover our rent and bills, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like I was drowning. But steady didn't mean easy. Clara was still in high school, and I was determined to give her a shot at a future better than mine. The job was mind-numbing, but it gave us stability. I worked 9 to 5, then came home to cook dinner and check on Clara's homework. She was quiet those days, her sketchbooks filled with darker, heavier drawings than before. I worried about her, but she always insisted she was fine. I didn't push. Grief has its own timeline. Still, I made it a point to keep learning, to keep moving forward. At night, after Clara went to bed, I'd crack open my laptop and take online courses, supply chain management, basic coding, anything that might give me an edge. I wasn't chasing a dream job. I was chasing security, the kind Dad never quite managed to lock down. Certifications piled up, small wins that felt like lifelines. I needed to earn more, save more, plan for Clara's college. She deserved that much. One evening, while scrolling through college alumni group online, I saw a post from two old classmates, Maya and Sam. They were working on a startup, something about a cloud-based platform to optimize small business operations. It sounded ambitious, maybe even a little crazy, but it sparked something in me. I hadn't felt that kind of curiosity since before Dad died. I messaged them, half expecting they'd brush me off. Instead, they invited me to grab coffee and talk. Over lukewarm lattes, they explained their vision, a tool to automate inventory and scheduling for shops like Dad's old auto repair place. I wasn't a tech genius, but I knew enough about business operations for my job, and I understood the grind of small businesses from watching Dad. I asked if they needed help. They didn't have money to pay me, but they offered me a small equity stake if I'd pitch in. I said yes without hesitating. It was a risk, but it felt like a chance to build something, not just survive. The startup became my second life. Days were for the logistics job, nights and weekends for the project. I'd get home, scarf down whatever was in the fridge, and jump on calls with Maya and Sam. I handled the non-technical side, market research, user feedback, even drafting pitch decks for potential investors. Clara would tease me, calling me Mr. CEO, when she'd catch me hunched over my laptop at 3 a.m. But she got it. She saw how hard I was pushing, and in her own way, she was pushing too. Her grades stayed solid, and her art started winning school awards. I'd frame her sketches and hang them in our tiny apartment, a reminder of why I was doing all this. The startup wasn't all hustle and hope, though. It was brutal at times. Our first prototype crashed constantly, and we argued over everything. Features, branding, whether we could even pull this off. 6 months in, we pitched to a local investor who tore our idea apart, saying it was too niche. I started to doubt myself. Was I wasting time on a pipe dream? My bank account was barely growing, and Clara's college applications were looming. Then Sam, the coder of our trio, hit a wall. He was burnt out, frustrated by the slow progress and the endless bugs. One night, he called it quits, saying he couldn't keep pouring his life into something that might never work. I didn't blame him, but his exit shook me. Maya and I sat in silence after he left our call, both wondering if we should fold too. I looked at Clara's latest sketch on the wall, a cityscape bursting with color, and thought, if I stop now, what am I teaching her? So we kept going, just the two of us, patching together what we could. Months later, we hit a breakthrough. Maya rewrote the core code, and I found a small business owner willing to test our beta. Their feedback was gold. The platform saved them hours on scheduling. We tweaked it, tested it again, and slowly more businesses signed on. It wasn't a gold rush, but it was progress. I still didn't quit my day job. Too many bills, too much at stake. But the startup was starting to feel real. Clara noticed a shift in me too. One night, she slid a drawing across the table, a cartoon of me juggling a laptop and a briefcase with a tiny superhero cape. "You're doing it, Lucas," she said. That sketch went up on the wall too. Then, out of nowhere, Clara dropped a bomb. I was wiping dishes after dinner when she said, "Lucas, I'm engaged." I nearly dropped the plate. I knew she'd been dating someone, Ben, but engaged? She was barely 20, just started her second year of community college. I peppered her with questions. How long had this been serious? Why the rush? She laughed, not offended, and explained they'd known each other since high school, reconnected a year ago, and had been inseparable since. "He's good to me," she said, her eyes bright. "I want you to meet him." Of course, I agreed. If someone was going to marry my sister, I needed to know who he was. We met Ben for dinner at a quiet diner. He was polite, a little nervous, but genuine. As we talked, something clicked. He mentioned his dad owned a chain of retail stores. I realized his father was one of our startup's early clients, a big one. I kept my face neutral, but my mind was racing. This was the guy who'd been emailing Maya about licensing our platform for his entire chain. I didn't say anything about it. I wanted to know Ben for Ben, not his dad's business. Clara must have sensed my gears turning because later, she pulled me aside. "I'm not rushing into this, Lucas. I love him. It's real." Her voice was steady, and when I looked at her, I believed her. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this connection was about to complicate everything. Life was a tightrope, and I, Lucas, was still walking it. My days in Portland were split between my 9 to 5 logistics job, ensuring my sister Clara had what she needed, and pouring every spare moment into the startup I co-founded with Maya. Our cloud-based platform for small businesses was gaining traction, but it was a slow climb. Clara's engagement to Ben had thrown a new curveball into the mix. Knowing Ben's father, Richard, was one of our startup's key clients added a layer of complexity I wasn't ready for. I kept that to myself, focusing on Clara's happiness, but the threads of our lives were starting to tangle in ways I couldn't ignore. Clara was glowing, planning her wedding while juggling community college. She'd always been resilient, but seeing her so sure of Ben gave me hope that she'd found someone who'd stand by her the way I always had. Still, I was protective. I'd raised her through our darkest days after Dad's death, and I wasn't about to let anyone, Ben included, disrupt the life we clawed our way back to. Ben seemed solid, though. At our dinner, he talked about his job as a graphic designer, his love for Clara's art, and his plans to build a life together. I liked him, but I reserved judgment. Trust is earned, not given. The startup, meanwhile, was a roller coaster. Maya and I were down to a 2-person team after Sam bailed, but our persistence was paying off. We'd onboard a handful of small businesses, and their feedback helped us refine the platform. One feature, an automated inventory tracker, was a hit, saving clients hours of manual work. Word spread, and we started getting inquiries from bigger players, including Richard's retail chain. His company had been using our platform for a few months, and his emails to Maya were getting pushy. He wanted a custom version for his stores and hinted at buying us out. I wasn't ready to sell. This was our creation, built from sleepless nights and sheer grit. Letting it go felt like betraying everything I'd sacrificed. I met Richard for the first time during a wedding planning dinner at a swanky restaurant in downtown Portland. Clara had warned me he could be intense, but I wasn't prepared for the frost in his handshake. The moment I introduced myself as Clara's brother, his eyes flicked over me. Jeans buttoned down, nothing flashy, and he barely nodded. "I thought her father would be here," he said, his tone flat, like I was a placeholder. I swallowed the sting and replied, "Our dad passed years ago. I've been looking after Clara since." He gave a curt, "I see," and turned to talk to someone else. No follow-up, no condolence, just dismissal. I felt Clara's hand squeeze mine under the table, her way of saying, "Don't let it get to you." As the evening went on, Richard's questions came, sharp and pointed. "What do you do, Lucas?" he asked, leaning back in his chair like he was conducting an interrogation. I could have mentioned the startup, but his attitude told me he'd already written me off. "I work in logistics," I said simply, leaving it at that. His lips twitched, not quite a smirk, but close. "Stable work," he said, then changed the subject. I knew his type, status obsessed, only interested in people who could boost his ego or his bottom line. I smiled to myself, thinking, you'll see me differently one day. I wasn't here to impress him, but I wasn't going to forget the slight either. Back at work, the startup was hitting a tipping point. A tech blog mentioned our platform in a roundup of tools to watch, and suddenly, our inbox was flooded with demo requests. Maya handled the coding and client calls, while I managed operations, contracts, billing, customer support. We were stretched thin, but the momentum kept us going. One night, Maya got an email from Richard's company proposing a meeting to discuss a deeper partnership. I knew what that meant. He wanted control. I told Maya we'd hear him out, but hold firm. This was our dream, not his acquisition. Clara's wedding planning ramped up, and I tried to be there for her, even if it meant late-night calls about centerpieces or guest lists. She was stressed, but happy, and I could see how much Ben grounded her. One evening, she showed me a sketch she'd done of their future home, a cozy house with a garden. "This is what I want, Lucas," she said. "Not just with Ben, but for us. You're part of this too." Her words hit hard. I'd been so focused on providing, I hadn't realized how much she worried about me. I promised her I'd be at every wedding event, no matter how busy things got. The startup's growth brought new challenges. We needed to hire help, but cash was tight. I took on more of my day job, chasing a promotion to cover the gap. Sleep became a memory again. My nights split between the startup and studying for work certifications. Clara noticed. "You're killing yourself, Lucas," she said one morning, sliding a coffee across the table. I shrugged it off, but she wasn't wrong. The pressure was relentless, and Richard's looming presence didn't help. His emails grew more insistent, and I suspected he'd try to use Clara's wedding to push his agenda. I wasn't wrong. At a venue walkthrough, Richard cornered me. "Lucas, you're in logistics, right? Everything about tech." His tone was casual, but his eyes were calculating. I kept it vague. "I dabble. Tech's interesting." He nodded, like he was humoring me, then launched into a pitch about how his company could elevate our platform. I listened, nodded, and said, "Sounds worth discussing." After the wedding, I wasn't giving him an inch, not yet. Clara caught my eye across the room, her expression a mix of pride and worry. She knew I was holding my ground, but she also knew Richard wasn't the type to back off. As the wedding date neared, the startup hit another milestone. A regional business association invited us to present at their conference. It was a big deal, a chance to attract investors who'd let us grow on our terms. Maya was thrilled, but I was cautious. Richard would be at the wedding, and I had a feeling he'd make his move there. I didn't trust him, but I trusted myself. I'd built this life for Clara and me from nothing, and no one was going to take that away. The wedding day arrived like a burst of sunlight after a long storm. Clara, my sister, was radiant, her joy infectious as she prepared to marry Ben in a charming Portland venue draped in flowers and soft lights. I, Lucas, stood by her side, juggling the roles of brother, guardian, and silent protector of the life we'd built from the ashes of our father's death. My days were still split between my logistics job, the startup I co-founded with Maya, and shielding our dreams from Ben's father, Richard, a retail tycoon with his sights set on our platform. His dismissive attitude toward me, first at the wedding planning dinner, then at the venue walkthrough, had left a bitter taste, but I kept my focus on Clara. This was her day, and I wasn't about to let anyone dim its shine. The morning of the wedding, I helped Clara with last-minute details, pinning her veil and cracking jokes to ease her nerves. She looked at me in the mirror and said, "Lucas, you're the reason I'm here. Not just today, but here." Her words caught me off guard, and I swallowed hard, managing a nod. I'd spent years keeping us afloat, through Dad's death, the loss of our home, the endless grind of jobs and bills. Hearing her say that made every sacrifice feel worth it. But the day wasn't over, and I knew Richard's presence loomed like a shadow. As guests arrived, I mingled, shaking hands and exchanging small talk. The startup was buzzing in the background. Our recent mention in a tech blog had drawn attention, and Maya was fielding emails from potential investors. I promised her I'd stay offline for the wedding, but my phone vibrated with a message from her. Richard's team just requested another demo. "He's pushing hard." I sighed, pocketing the phone. Of course he was. Richard had made it clear he wanted to buy us out, and I suspected he'd use the wedding's festive mood to press his case. I wasn't playing that game. Not today. Then I saw him. Richard strode past, crisp in a tailored suit, his eyes scanning the room. Our gazes met for a split second, and he looked away as if I were just another guest. It was deliberate, a repeat of his coldness from before. I felt a flicker of anger, but pushed it down. Clara's laughter rang out nearby, and I reminded myself, this is for her. I kept chatting with guests, my smile fixed, my mind sharp. Richard's snub wasn't worth my energy, but I wasn't forgetting it either. The ceremony was perfect. Clara and Ben exchanged vows with a sincerity that hushed the room, and I caught myself blinking back tears. As they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers, and for a moment, everything felt right. At the reception, I was sipping a drink when an organizer tapped my shoulder. "Lucas, you're up for a speech." I blinked, caught off guard. Speech? I didn't prepare anything. Apparently, Clara had added me to the lineup, insisting her brother say a few words. I hesitated, then thought, why not? She deserved to hear from me. I stepped to the microphone, the room's chatter fading. "Hi, I'm Lucas, Clara's brother." I began, my voice steady despite the nerves. Heads turned. Some guests likely expected a parent, not a sibling. I took a breath and spoke from the heart. "I'm not just her brother. I've been her guardian since I was 21, when we lost our dad in an accident." The room stilled, all eyes on me. I shared how our world collapsed. Dad's death, the debts, losing our home. Clara was just 16, still in high school, and I was barely out of college, juggling jobs to keep us going. I worked days, nights, weekends, whatever it took to make sure she had a chance, I said, glancing at Clara. Her eyes glistened, Ben's arm around her. Then I added, almost casually, and all that time I was helping build a startup from nothing. I nodded toward the entrance, where Maya had just slipped in, late as always. Shout out to my co-founder for making it fashionably tardy. A ripple of laughter broke the tension, but the mood shifted. People leaned forward, processing what I'd said. I wasn't boasting. I wanted them to understand why Clara and I were so close, why this day meant everything. I wrapped up by praising Ben, saying how his love for Clara gave me confidence she was in good hands. To my sister, I finished raising a glass and the life she's building. The room erupted in applause. As I stepped down, the energy was different. Guests nodded at me, some whispering to each other. I headed for my seat, but before I could sit, Richard appeared, all smiles, like we'd been pals for years. He gripped my hand, then Maya's, his voice booming. "Your platform's a game changer, Lucas. My stores are saving thousands because of it." I raised an eyebrow. This was the man who'd barely acknowledged me hours ago. "I've been trying to get you on board for months," he went on, oblivious to my skepticism. "Why didn't you mention you were behind it?" I met his gaze, calm but firm. "Why would I? So you pretend to respect me." The words landed like a quiet thunderclap. Richard froze, his smile faltering. I didn't raise my voice or make a scene, just stated the truth and walked away, leaving him standing there, recalculating. Maya stifled a laugh as we moved to the bar. "That was perfect," she whispered. I shrugged, but inside I felt a weight lift. I called him out, not for me, but for every time someone's been judged too quickly. The reception rolled on, music and laughter filling the air. Clara pulled me into a dance, her smile brighter than ever. "You killed that speech," she said. "And did you just shut down Richard?" I grinned. "Maybe." She hugged me tight, and for the first time all day, I let myself relax. But I knew this wasn't the end. Richard's interest in our startup was only growing, and I had a feeling he wouldn't let my words at the reception slide. The game was far from over. The wedding was over, but the echoes of that day lingered. My sister Clara was now married to Ben, starting a new chapter in Portland, and I, Lucas, was left navigating the fallout of my pointed exchange with Ben's father, Richard. My speech at the reception, where I'd revealed my role as Clara's guardian and co-founder of a rising startup, had shifted how people saw me, Richard included. His sudden shift from dismissive to overly chummy was predictable, but when I called him out for his shallow respect, I'd drawn a line. The question now was what came next for our startup, for Clara, and for the delicate balance I'd fought so hard to maintain. In the weeks that followed, Clara and Ben settled into married life. She sent me photos of their tiny apartment, decorated with her sketches and Ben's quirky furniture finds. "We're happy, Lucas," she texted, along with a drawing of me in a superhero cape labeled Best Brother. Seeing her thrive was everything I'd worked for since Dad's death, when I'd become her guardian at 21. Those years of juggling jobs, bills, and our startup with Maya had been for her to give her a chance at a life unburdened by our past. Knowing she'd found that with Ben gave me peace, but I couldn't shake the unease about Richard. The startup was at a crossroads. Our cloud-based platform, designed to streamline small business operations, was gaining buzz. The tech blog mention had led to a surge of clients, and our presentation at a regional business conference landed us 2 angel investors. Maya and I finally hired a small team, a coder and a customer support rep, to ease the load. I still hadn't quit my logistics job. The steady paycheck was my safety net, especially with Clara's college tuition looming. But the startup's growth meant tougher choices. Richard's company, a major client, kept pushing for a buyout. His emails, now addressed to both Maya and me, were polite but relentless, offering sums that made my head spin. Selling would mean financial security, but it would also mean handing over our creation to a man I didn't trust. I met Richard again a month after the wedding, at his request, in a sleek downtown office. He greeted me warmly, as if our reception clash never happened. "Lucas, you're a hard man to pin down," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. I sat, keeping my expression neutral. He launched into his pitch. His retail chain wanted to acquire our platform, integrate it fully, and keep Maya and me on as consultants. The offer was generous, enough to pay off Clara's tuition, buy a house, and never worry about bills again. But his tone, smooth and commanding, grated on me. He spoke like he was doing me a favor, like our startup was a lucky fluke he'd deigned to elevate. I listened, then said, "We're not ready to sell. We're focused on growing independently." His smile tightened, and I saw a flash of the man who dismissed me at the wedding planning dinner. "Don't wait too long," he warned. "Opportunities like this don't last." I left the meeting unsettled. Maya was torn when I told her. That money could change everything, she said, but she agreed Richard's control would stifle us. We decided to hold firm, betting on our own vision. It was a gamble, but the startup was ours, built from nights of no sleep and a stubborn belief in what we could do. Still, Richard didn't back off. His company renewed their license, sent support tickets, and stayed a client, professional, but with an undercurrent of pressure. I knew he was waiting for us to crack. Clara sensed something was off during our weekly calls. "You're stressing about Ben's dad, aren't you?" she asked one evening. I admitted Richard's pushiness was getting to me. She sighed. "He's intense, but Ben's not like him. Don't let him mess with your head." Her words grounded me. Ben had been nothing but respectful, even after my jab at his father. At a family dinner Clara hosted, he pulled me aside. "I heard about Dad's offer," he said. I told him to ease up. "You and Clara are family now, not business." His sincerity surprised me, and I realized Clara had chosen well. Ben's character was his own, not his father's shadow. The startup's trajectory kept climbing. A national tech magazine featured us, and a major logistics firm signed on, doubling our revenue. Maya and I finally took salaries, small but enough to let me cut back hours at my day job. I started dreaming bigger, expanding the platform, maybe opening an office. But Richard's presence lingered. At a tech networking event, he approached me, all charm again. "Lucas, let's talk partnership, not acquisition," he said. I was polite but firm. "We're good for now." His eyes narrowed, but he backed off. I knew he'd try again, but I was ready. Reflecting on all, I've learned a few things that stick with me. First, don't judge someone by their surface. Richard saw me as a nobody until he knew my title, but real worth isn't in a name or a bank account. I've walked into rooms where people looked past me, only to scramble when they learned what I'd built. That kind of respect is hollow. Second, kindness is your baseline, not a transaction. You don't lose anything by treating people right, but you lose plenty when you don't. Richard's snap judgments cost him my trust, and no offer can buy that back. Finally, the quiet ones are often carrying the heaviest loads. I was Clara's rock, but I was also just a guy trying not to fall apart. Next time you're tempted to overlook someone, pause. You don't know their story. Clara's doing great now, sketching her dreams and building a life with Ben. The startup's still ours, growing on our terms. Richard's still a client, but he's just that, a client. I don't need his approval, and I never did. True respect isn't bought or demanded. It's earned through how you treat people, especially when you think no one's watching. Character outlasts status, money, or power. That's who I am, and that's what I'll carry forward, no matter what comes next. Thank you for following Lucas and Clara's journey. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it.